Good morning, everyone. This week's Torah portion begins with Abraham purchasing the cave of Machpelah in the city of Hebron as a burial place for his wife Sarah after she passes away. And this becomes the ancestral burial plot for Abraham and Sarah, for Isaac and Rebekah, and for Jacob and Leah. And the Torah says it was in the city of Hebron. And the question is, what is the meaning of the word Hebron? And rabbis explain that the root of the word Hebron is from the word chibur, which means connection. Why is the burial plots of our ancestors in the city that means connection? Because life is about a connection of the body and the soul. God instills a soul in our bodies, and it's the bond, the connection of the soul with the body in this world. And therefore, the burial place, which represents the culmination of the life, is in a place called Hebron, representing that man's mission in this world is to fuse and to join the body and the soul, that the soul shall radiate and permeate the body and activate the body in a spiritual and in a godly way. You know, my whole life I thought that there are religious Jews and secular Jews. But after returning from Israel, I will never again use the word secular Jew, because I think it's an oxymoron. There's no such thing as a secular Jew. When we went to Tel HaShomer Hospital, I'll tell you about 3 encounters with 3 soldiers. The first one name was Noam, who lost a leg, killing terrorists and saving lives in Israel on October 7th. And when I told him he's a hero, he said, "I'm not a hero. My friends who died, they're the heroes. I just sacrificed the leg." And then he said the following words. He said, "I was ready to give my life. I have no problem with that. But I was only asked to give a leg." A Jew who says, "I'm ready to die at the age of 20 to protect my fellow Jews in the land of Israel," is a holy Jew. Second Israeli young man I met, a young soldier, also without a leg, tells me how he was bleeding out and he felt like he was going to pass out. And he said, "I turned to God, Borei Olam, I turned to God, and I said, God, if you save my life, I will do teshuvah, I will return to Torah mitzvot." And he says, "I passed out. The IDF took me to the hospital. I woke up a few days later, and here I am in the hospital." And he said, "Since I woke up, I started putting on my tefillin each and every day." The third soldier talked to me about the fight that we have to carry on here to defeat evil and protect Eretz Yisrael and the Jewish nation from this evil. And he said to me, "I lost a number of friends, but I know shehem beseder, they're okay. Im Elokim, God is watching over them, and they are okay." These 3 soldiers didn't look religious. They all had tattoos, and some of them had earrings. If you met them on the street, you would think they're not, you would say they're chilonim, they're secular. But no. There's no such thing as a secular Jew. Because when you have a godly soul in your body, whether you see that soul or not on the outside, know that every single Jew is a part of God as holy. And we have to realize that and recognize that we should never think that one Jew is better than another Jew. You never know who's a greater Jew. They're far greater than I am because they made sacrifices to protect the Jewish nation. There's a story I heard that on October 7th, there was a Chabad man and woman who lived in New York, and they got a call that their son was tragically murdered in the terrorist attack. And so they were devastated, heartbroken, and they decided they're going to bury their son in Israel, because that's the country he fought and died for. And so they got on the first El Al flight to go to the funeral of their son in Israel. Poor man was sitting on the plane, devastated, brokenhearted, thinking about his son, and he said to himself, "What could I do for my son? Why don't I get up and help people do a mitzvah?" So he goes over to this fellow sitting in the next row. He says, "Would you like to put on tefillin?" And the man says, "No, thank you. I don't do that. Thank you." So he goes to the next row, and he wants someone to put on tefillin. So he says to the fellow, "Listen, my son just died on the front lines in the south as a soldier defending Israel. And I'm traveling now to his funeral with my wife. And I want to ask you, would you do a mitzvah in honor of his soul for his neshama and put on tefillin?" The fellow says, "Of course I would. I don't usually do tefillin, but for your son I would do it." And he stood up to stop putting on tefillin. Meanwhile, the fellow in the next row hears this conversation. He says, I also want to put on tefillin for your son. And he stands up. And the next person, and before you know it, there was a line in the aisle of people waiting to put on tefillin in memory of his son. And then the word traveled to the cockpit from one of the stewardess that there's all people lining up to put on tefillin with this fellow who lost his son. And the pilot of the plane turns to the co-pilot and says, you take care, you control the plane. I'm going to put on tefillin too. And the pilot came out of the cockpit, stood on line with everyone else, and put on tefillin. This is the Jewish people. No nation in the world like the Jewish people, who have faith running through their blood vessels, through their sinews, through their veins, that goes all the way back to Abraham, the first Jew. And it's that spiritual strength that unites us and will help us to overcome any enemy that seeks to harm the Jewish people. Am Yisrael Chai.